Now I'm going to talk tonight about the Nephilim and a document that an individual named L.A. Marzulli created, which I'm going to bring that up. And let's see, right here. On my blog at sawyerhg.wordpress.com. There's a document that says, it's titled Space Aliens Equal Nephilim, Antichrist Reappears After Obama, writing Revelation 6:7 Green Human. That's a funny title, isn't it? I try to make these titles so that people will recognize something about them, so that they might pay attention to it, because there's going to be new information that they're not hearing anyplace else. Or, I mean, they may hear it someplace else, but very few other places. There's very few individuals that are actually broadcasting and talking and sharing this information publicly that I know about. I mean, I could be missing a whole bunch, but so this is a unique read, and of course it's not for everybody, because it's only up to each individual to decide what they want to believe in and what they want to consider. If you don't consider anything new, then you can't believe in anything new. So if you're happy with where you are, then that's fine. You've got your reward. But if you're thirsty for the truth about all this information that's been flooded upon us, and some of it not just flooded on us, but provided by the next level, the creators of this garden, then you've come to the right place. One of the right places. Not the only place that you can go to, of course. But I'm gonna read from a number of different documents. I'm going to start with L.A. Marzulli's blog. Now, I go back a few years with L.A. Marzulli, who I don't know personally. But I go back a few years with him because when I saw his blog, he's a Christian broadcaster. I would call him Christian, but he's on the side of believing that the extraterrestrials are well, he thinks that they're Luciferians, as I do, as T and Do said. But although we have that huge picture in common, as there's others that also believe that, other Christians that also believe that, I haven't heard anybody talk about where in prophecy where they are depicted as actually coming to the planet. And the reason why you won't see that is because there's a problem with, if you find a prophecy that says that they've come, and if that prophecy is in a position in the realm of the prophecies of the book of Revelations, to where a number of things have already occurred that they don't believe have occurred, like for instance the return of Jesus incarnate as the Son of Man, because Son of Man, remember, means offspring human, or human offspring, however order you want to say it in. And that's how Jesus said he was coming back. He said, you will see the Son of Man. He didn't say you will see Jesus. He said you will see the Son of Man. That's very important. And that's not the only place and way that he brought up the fact that he was going to be here walking among us, looking like us, like he did 2,000 years ago. When we're talking about Jesus, we're talking about the individual, the mind from the level above human, an older member, someone who's existed in the next level even before this planet existed, or at least before this civilization existed. Possibly before a number of civilizations existed. I don't know how long that individual has been a member of the next level, an adult member of the next level. Remember, the Luciferians never were adult members of the next level. They were only like sons, like offspring. They were only adopted for the moment, and they were given physical bodies to use on spacecrafts in order to do a preliminary task that would make them like an apprentice relationship, to where they could demonstrate whether they were going to really commit to being a member of the next level, or they were going to regress to human behavior. And they ended up regressing into human behavior, and so the next level allowed them to do that, because the next level don't do things against people's will until they're ready to recycle, or if those individuals are in the way of what they're doing in such a way that they could interfere with the individuals in their classroom that are going to graduate, then they will see to it that those individuals are immobilized in some way, which they end up doing to themselves in a large part. But so I don't know exactly how the next level would immobilize somebody. I have no examples of that, except if you will look at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and of course the flood. Those were definitely, it appears, immobilizations to parts of the planet or cities and certain beings that are growing, because the next level was weeding the garden. But the overall weeding wasn't going to take place, according to Jesus, until the fruit was ready to harvest their fruit. Where the false fruit, which they were comparing to tares, which was a plant that looked like wheat, but it didn't produce the same kind of kernel and seed and as wheat did. And so it was a facsimile, and that's what the Luciferians do. They create a facsimile of everything the next level does, because they had that experience of working for the next level and being in a classroom in the next level. So they know a lot about how the next level works, the garden, and how they grow their fruit. Individuals, humans that are implanted with seeds in a very naturalistic way. The implants, not like implants like the space aliens do, and not like implants like the humans do. Those are primitive ways that humans use to track animals and things like that, and other humans. And of course, it's getting, even though it's becoming more sophisticated, because they can implant chips into the body, doesn't make it any less primitive, because whenever they do something they're also causing problems to that organism, whether it's radioactive poisoning, or from electromagnetic field that has a certain amount of radioactivity associated with it in low doses, but low doses can affect cellular systems also. They do. All doses affect, I heard a scientist talking about radioactive particles. Particle of strontium-90, for instance, that comes from reactors, that byproduct that is being put into our water and air and food as we speak because of allowing a certain amount of it to come out of those nuclear reactors and go into the atmosphere, which ends up going to the water table eventually, which ends up going to wherever it goes. Wherever that water goes, that's where it goes. So if it ends up in the food, then it doesn't die. Those particles don't die. They cause certain decay and deterioration of whatever cellular life they are alongside, within, or upon. And if it happens to be an organ system of a human that is critical to life of that human, well then that organ system is going to start to break down. And you're going to see tumors form because of that breakdown, because that's the immune system going after that and not succeeding. And basically just creating scar tissue upon scar tissue. At least I believe that's what's going on. That's what all the cancer is about, for the most part. Not that chemicals don't also have those qualities of becoming toxic to the body, to where the body doesn't know how to get rid of it, and so it ends up becoming tumorous in the same way, and cancerous in the same way. But I think different chemicals have different properties, and the body has different ways of getting rid of some of them. But if they have too much to do, then the body has an abundance of free radicals that are not able to be washed out because of combination of other factors, like lack of exercise or accumulation of too much fat in the blood from eating too many meats and processed fats that don't digest properly, and so they end up in the blood, and that weakens the whole immune system, makes it sluggish, and does a lot of things to the body so that you don't have energy to combat as much, and as a result things grow that might not grow otherwise. So that's a little lesson there in nutritional health, which T and Do paid quite a bit of attention to, especially after T left. Do said later that he didn't think T needed to go through what we needed to go through in examining and becoming guinea pigs for various cleansing type diets. And those cleansing diets had multifunctions. They weaned us from thinking that we had to have certain foods to be happy and satisfied. And they also weaned us from thinking that we can only be satisfied by solid fuel, because we did liquid diets. And they also weaned us from becoming addicted, or making a habit of eating too much junk food. Not that junk food doesn't have its place, because T and Do always said that with these diets, it's actually good to cheat, so that it's like giving a sugar cube to the horse. And T and Do compared these bodies to horses. Before they even ever talk, I never even heard them talk about the fact that in Revelation 6 it talks about the four horses of the apocalypse, which are, I'm certain of, are actually human vehicles that space aliens are riding. And that's what I was going to talk about now with the Nephilim talk. So what Mr. Marzulli was talking about, which he doesn't allow me to comment on his sites anymore because he doesn't like to hear about Tiendo and doesn't believe that they are the two witnesses, doesn't believe that it's Jesus and the Father. And I believe hasn't really given me a good reason scripturally why they can't be, except just feeling like the next level they wouldn't bump themselves off. Where if the disciples of Jesus, if they weren't sent on a suicide mission for Jesus, then I don't know what a suicide mission is. I mean, they knew ahead of time that they would be bumped off by talking about Jesus because they saw what happened to him. And he told them that if they treat me this way, they're going to treat you that way. And he told them that they were going to have to drink the same cup that he was drinking. And the cup was the cup of his blood. That means they had to shed their blood is also, I mean, they didn't have to. It wasn't a requirement. But if they were going to progress towards graduation, then it was a requirement. But they still had the choice not to do it. And it didn't mean if they didn't do it that they would be blocked out of the next level or they wouldn't have another chance. Because the next level, it takes a lot for the next level to actually throw somebody away that they put an investment into. When I say somebody, I'm talking about the soul body that's created when the next level deposits a seed for that soul that grows inside the physical body. And it grows when the human that received that seed meets up with an incarnate older member, and they start talking, and at that moment, that seed allows them to recognize that that's their older member. And when they recognize that, that's when the returning soul from the previous classroom, for instance, from the Moses experience, is able to get a little bit of their mind, which is mind that they received from their older members, like Moses and Jehovah, of course, when they were with Moses and Jehovah, and put that and begin to allow that mind, which is like equivalent to information and also equivalent to spirit, to enter into that new soul pocket or returning soul pocket, depending on, well, in this example, the Jesus example, it's a different type of deposit that's setting that body aside so that that soul can actually merge with that spirit of that human body, because the spirit is different than the soul. The soul is a container. The spirit also has a container within the human body, both within the human body. And but the spirit can't. Well, I'm not going to say that because I think it would be wrong. It might be wrong, so I'm not going to even go there. But to say what the spirit can't do. So what Mr. Marzulli is saying in the beginning of his article, that if anybody enters the chat room, I'll post it. I'll post it for, well, actually, if you go to my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com, you'll see the Nephilim equals fallen angels, space aliens. So Actually, Mr. Marzulli is actually referring to another article that actually I didn't even actually open. I should have. And I'm going to open that now. And he says, go to the 23 mark of this article that has to do with a World Bank insider that talks about a global conspiracy. And you can go to that. You can go to that by going to the bottom of my blog page where I'm talking about the Nephilim, and you can see L.A. Marzulli's post there. Click that. That'll bring you to the post that he used to write his blog. But what he's saying in his blog is that in his words, what we have found out, and this sounds implausible, but is absolutely correct. The fact that has been held in secret doesn't mean that it's not true. It is true. There's a second species on this planet. They're not extraterrestrials, he says. Remnants of their civilizations are all over the place. The group has large brains. They're very distinct from Homo sapiens. We know this because their DNA was tested. They have skulls all over the place because they have been on Earth with us. And then he's quoting from this woman, Melissa, saying that many of us, this is Melissa talking, many of us have long suspected there are cartels that include leading financiers, politicians, business conglomerates, and secret societies working together to achieve their goals of maintaining power, control, and stability over the citizens of every country in the world. They will do so by whatever means necessary. The investigations conducted by Karen Hughes, H-U-D-E-S, and her colleagues have shed a lot more light on the conspiracy. It turns out it's not just theory, it's fact. So this individual, Karen, was the one that I guess is which I read something else about her. That she was a World Bank insider. Or maybe there's another person that's a whistleblower for the Illuminati families, who talks all about different spiritual things that she was trained to be able to do and all that. Which most of this, I have no doubt that there's a lot of truth to all this. I can't speak to each little piece and say what is true about it and what's not exactly, because I just don't have that kind of information. And I don't need that kind of information. I know in general that all these things are happening because T&O said they were happening. And I have seen it now with my own eyes through the years that I've been outside, that I was outside the classroom, but that I have reawoken to belief in T&O, so that I'm looking at things with some of their mind perspective, because I did receive some of their mind while I was a student for 19 years. And so that does give you some of their perspective, because you know how they think by the examples they gave, even seemingly insignificant examples were examples of the behavior and ways and the way they would say things, the way they would do things, the thoroughness they would have. They wouldn't waste time. They wouldn't spin their wheels. They wouldn't move so fast that they would break things. And they were clean, but they weren't preachy. They required a lot of their students, and they expected the best of their students. And they didn't do a lot of praise of their students to butter them up. And they didn't seem to have favorites, although they had some individuals that they could work better with for the certain tasks that they didn't want to have interference with. And those were probably the older students. But in some cases, those were students that needed that experience to address their own ego. Because if a certain student was working closer with T and Do, their human ego could think that they were heightened by that. And although they were heightened by that, it also put a lot of pressure on them to get rid of their self. And some individuals that were brought very close to T and Do, working very close to T and Do, and were very successful in the group in terms of the disciplines that we had, and their memory would work really well. They would remember all the little procedures that were given on how to do things that were examples of how to use. Because if we did things the way T and Do gave us to do them, then we were using their mind. It didn't matter what they told us to do. But they didn't tell us to do stupid things. And they didn't tell us to do anything illegal, and they didn't tell us to do anything immoral, even by the lowest standards of humans, immoral. But I mean, we didn't even say four-letter words, curses and things like that. Not because those words are so terrible, but because those were slangs, they said, and those were human. It was human to use those slangs. And they were trying to advance us out of human, so they were giving us new terminology, and they wanted us to take control of these brains so that these brains didn't just slip into what they were doing before they met T and Do and joined with the classroom. They called it a classroom because it was a school, for sure. It was like an astronaut training program, they called it at one point. Astronaut being an astronaut in the next level form of astronaut, which is very different from being a human astronaut because you're not limited at all like the humans are limited. And you don't die, but you might decide to take a task that would sacrifice your physical body. Now, what I wanted to say to this L.A. Marzulli post was that I didn't say in my post was that if you go further down the post, you'll see that he's trying to demonstrate where the Nephilim still are in the world because of the evidence of their because of the evidence of their being having skulls, although bigger skulls, and but T and Do would show that the evidence of them by their behavior and ways of the humans. That's how you can tell who is from the Nephilim and who are not. If you don't have any regard for life, you're probably from the genetic strain of the Nephilim. Now, I want to back up a little bit because in Genesis 6 it said that the Lord was going to destroy the world, to destroy all the Nephilim, because when those space alien fallen angels disconnected from the next level by their choice of cohabitating with humans on the planet to disregard their task and regress into human behaviors that that they apparently had not overcome before they were given a task to do for the next level. And so that when they produced their offspring, they were called giants. Okay, but that the Hebrew word is Nephilim in that passage. And that's where that word came from. And because giants isn't the only word that it can be translated to. However, according to this article from L.A. Marzulli, Josephus, the famous documentarian that was not a Jesus believer, who was a Jew, documented Jesus' existence, by the way, and also documented that there was evidence of giants in the past. And I'm not going to try to get into that in any detail, but you can look at L.A. Marzulli's post to see a little bit more about that, and then maybe he can point you to other things. But and you can tell him that Sawyer sent them to his site, if you want. Because unlike him, the next level, nor I, trying to be some degree of a representative of the information that next level, that T and Do left behind and taught while they were here, we don't fear somebody disbelieving in T and Do. No, it's natural to have doubts, especially at this time. The hardest thing in the world right now to do is to believe in T and Do. And that's why there's so few that are talking about it. I mean, I think there's more that believe in T and Do that aren't talking about it because it's too much for them to, it's barely enough for them to believe. And then to talk about it to others is too big of a leap for them. So when the next level sees them and knows that they believe in T and Do, when they lose their physical bodies, maybe the next level will take that soul and store it. Like Do said, like put on ice, so to speak. There wouldn't be any pain to it. And be brought back for a future opportunity after some recycling of the planet. And when there's older members to start a new classroom, like the Abraham experience or the Moses experience, which would lead to a new kind of Jesus experience, which would lead to a new kind of T and Do experience, to a graduation classroom. Like just graduated, the 42 individuals that graduated, 38 with Do and then 4 afterwards, within the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years. So, I venture to say that all human beings have some Nephilim programming in them. So we don't have to go very far to look to find the humans that are Nephilim. However, if you don't give in to that programming, then you're not responsible for that programming being in you or being a part of you or being attacked by that programming. Because because where the programming comes from are all the discarnate Nephilim that, not having a physical body anymore, they seek to use existing physical bodies to accomplish what they want to accomplish, to feel what they want to feel, to have a sense of self-determination that they want that they want, and all the other aspects of all the other aspects of human vehicle. So, okay, but who are the actual? Well, let me back up again, because after the Lord used the flood to get rid of the Nephilim because they had grown so violent. That's what it says in Genesis 6, that they became very violent, and they were eating. They were enslaving humans and eating them and doing all kinds of things uh, to satisfy themselves and their own desires. And maybe they were giants in their stature, but they were also uh, um, taught by the fallen angels the tricks of the human kingdom with the spirit world, with the use of the spirit world and the use of herbs and the use of uh, uh, um, positive thinking, I imagine, and other things that we look at now and say, oh, well, those are good things, aren't they? And I say, yes, they are good things. But the next level wasn't ready for humans to get that information yet. Because if the humans begin to depend on all those things, then they won't look to the next level as much. They will start to think that they can keep themselves alive indefinitely and uh, on their own. And they can't. They won't keep themselves alive indefinitely, because the purpose of the garden and the experiment is that humanity is a stepping stone. It's like the cocoon stage for the caterpillar. The human is like the caterpillar that enters the cocoon by leaving the human kingdom in terms of in their mind, by joining with an older member. You're being captured out of or raptured out of the human kingdom to be in a in-between condition, to where you're not yet a member of the next level, but you're also not operating as a human entirely anymore. Because when you go with the older member, they don't allow you to take a lot of your primary human behaviors with you. That's why you can't, even if you join with a spouse, you're no longer going to be related to that spouse any differently than you'd be related to somebody that was not your spouse, that was a co-member of that group. And so there are no marriages. That's why Jesus said that in the regeneration, there is no marriage or giving in marriage, because you're like the angels. And when he says like the angels, he's talking about like the individuals that were graduating into the next level, uh, whether they had graduated or not, whether they were doing a preliminary, like an elementary task, like the watchers, or messenger task, which is a little more responsibility than a watcher task. Um, and maybe that, oh, maybe a messenger task would not be given to somebody who wasn't considered to be trustworthy enough to deliver the message properly. Because the next level doesn't sow disinformation, but they do provide uh, the Luciferians to uh, uh, to sow misinformation, which they know they will do, to give humans the option of not believing in the next level, because the next level wants the humans to use their free will, and you can't use your free will if you don't have any other options. It's really that simple. So 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 after so af- so so if the Nephilim were all wiped out, um, how did they come back if they're here now? Because I mean Noah was saved with his family, so you can see how that strain survived. But how did, if all the humans were killed on the earth, and the Nephilim were actually part of those humans, because they were, even though they were seeded by the fallen angels, they were still human. Well, you might want to call them human equivalent, because now they're a hybrid of the combination of the seed from the fallen angels, space aliens, and they're only called space aliens at this point is because they have access to near space, which doesn't go very far away from the planet. They can't go to where the next level operates. I doubt they can go very far away at all, but I don't even know if they can go out of the solar system, or if they would want to, because I don't think they can go back. The ones that came from another galaxy or solar system through like a wormhole that the next level created that Tiendo talked about in the 1970s as before there was wormhole talk, talked about it as a highway. I don't believe that they can go back, or they would have. Although maybe they could, no, let me put it this way. I don't think they can go back, but they think they can go back, and that's why they're working so hard to try to escape the planet. That's why they want to develop the technology of the humans, because they don't have all the laboratories and things that the humans have. They didn't have all those things on their spacecrafts when they fell from next level task, because their spacecrafts weren't equipped to do all the kind of things that they would need to do if they were going to try to escape and and be able to start a new civilization on some planet that appears to be inhabitable. They need ways to test all that ahead of time, and they just didn't have that equipment. So that's why they started in the 1930s and 40s and 50s by trying to steal humans that did have that knowledge on how to build nuclear reactors and for energy source and things like that, so that they could start to uh, have more technology that they could build into spacecrafts or put on spacecrafts that they could then take with them so that they could leave before another recycling takes place. Because some of them know through kind of a word of mouth kind of understanding that there have been a number of recycling periods on the Earth. And some of them knew that was taking place also on the planet that they came from, whether it was in the Sirius constellation or by the Sirius star, or or any of them, Fomalhaut or Altair or Procyon or Arcturus. Anyway, but so then how did some Nephilim come to start that strain over again after the flood? Well, what I think happened, and there's some evidence of this, is that the spacecrafts that the fallen angels had with them were able to go underwater. And if you think about it, there's been a lot of sightings of very large spacecrafts going into the sea. I heard a first-hand testimony from an individual, well, I heard it secondhand, of an individual that was stationed in the South Pacific and in the Navy, and he said he saw a spacecraft actually go into the ocean, and it blew his mind. And And then there's been reports of seeing crafts go into the Great Lakes of the United States, and there's been talk of them being in other big bodies of water. So when the next level said in Revelation, which I should search for actually, I'm going to search for sea and soul. And see what comes up. Here it is. Yeah, I found it. Revelations 16:3. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man. Blood of a dead. Well, man wasn't in there, but they put it in. And every living soul died in the sea. Interesting. I always wondered what living souls would have died in the sea. But the space aliens are living souls, or some of them are living souls. Now, this might be talking about sea in the context of the sea of humans. It's hard to know that. I'll have to go research that a little more anyway. A lot of times you can use multiple translations to the same word and be correct, because it will have to do with when the next level is instigating a part of the prophecy. So everybody gets a chance to be right, and so therefore nobody has to be actually threatened to take on someone else's view. And that's another part of the free will. But the ultimate correctness of any verse sometimes takes quite a while to actually see. And I'm working on that continuously. But if they weren't able to survive by having spacecrafts that were in the sea, they were likely able to access their underground facilities, which couldn't be as sophisticated as the underground facilities that are being created now for the humans and the space aliens to hide in, if their plans don't go well and they can't escape the planet. Or they could be just kind of primitive conditions, like in caves where they just park their spacecraft and they can, like air pockets, to where they can survive for a while. With the way it works, so with the water pressure not actually flooding them out for whatever reason. But the next level, I mean, if you go under the seabed, then and there's some way of closing it, opening and closing it, which is all possible. There could have been technology in previous civilizations that and those areas actually didn't have to be covered with water at the time. They could have created very secure entrances to underground facilities, thinking that they could be flooded, and so making it so watertight. And then, so even if they weren't in spacecrafts in the sea, they were in their underground bunkers under the sea. And I'm sure this word here in this verse that I just read to you would apply to under the sea as well as in the sea. I mean, the word in. Well, I'm not going to go into that right now because it actually brought something else up that's very interesting. But now, so when they're in their underground facility, there's no telling how many are in there. And there's no telling what kind of supplies they have in there. And they could have like a whole environment like the humans created in Arizona. They called it the bubble, or where they lived for months, I think, and they had their own gardens and they had their own little duplication of the ocean and a lake, and with the habitats and stuff like that, and they were growing food and corn and vegetables, and so that no doubt is going on. Hydroponic growing and stuff like that is no doubt going on in the underground bases that are being created and equipped now, and they're being created and equipped quickly now because they know it's crucial. And that's why we're bound to have another financial disaster or more, because they want access to a lot of money, and they'll do it in any way they can. Like, for instance, the prosecution of J.P. Morgan Chase Manhattan Bank for billions of dollars, I think, was part of the way of reducing the value of that stock which was the ramification of it, the way of them getting more money to pay for all the underground facilities that the board of directors on those corporations are certainly going to be among the ones that want to buy a spot for. So they're going to be all in favor of joining in with a conspiracy. Now, everybody in the organization isn't going to know what's going on, but somebody in the organization is going to know what's going on, and they're going to see it for what it is. Now, I'm going to take a short break for a second here, and during the break, I'm going to just put up this Book of Revelations verse here. And at the same time, I'm going to turn on the music. sounds so muffled, that music. I guess it's, so obviously I'm back. And my system is slow. I don't know why. I guess I got too many windows open. But so excuse me. So what I said to L.A. Marzulli in a comment that I didn't really care if he posted or not, but I knew he would get the comment, and he might choose to read it, he might not, but that's his choice. I'm going to read a little bit of it. I don't care if you post this, as I know you don't like what I say, but I did want to comment on your Nephilim post, but comments were turned off, so I'll state what I wanted to offer here. Like BP Earthwatch and others, the Antichrist is expected to return before Jesus returns. I don't disagree with that, though I believe you're missing that Jesus' return was in two phases: incarnate as a Son of Man, offspring human, for the first fruit, his small group of disciples his Father gave him, and the second, not incarnate, but to be witnessed in the sky, atmosphere, near space, and potentially on the surface, but not incarnate, for the second fruit. Those perhaps as many as 144,000 saved for future lesson time after recycling. So then where is the Antichrist depicted? Tiendo said that all the space aliens were fallen angels. Now, does that mean that they're still living in the same bodies that they had? It doesn't have to mean that. It may mean that, for all I know. That's possible, but I doubt it. I think they're all in the discarnate world, and they're influencing humans through the discarnate world, and they're also influencing their seed of the humans that they hybridized. I don't know if that's a word, but the humans that they grew, they were born in test tubes or whatever way they did it, by abducting humans with eggs and then putting their seed into those humans to come up with new creatures that, for all intents and purposes, are the Nephilim. Now, when they got older, because this happened thousands of years ago, right during the flood, and while in their facilities, they were trying to grow humans in that facility, grow new members to their organization. And then when the flood subsisted enough to where there was land again, then they would have ventured out onto that land and would have probably started some communities. Because they certainly don't want to stay cooped up in some underground facility forever. I believe they hate it there. I can imagine, how that is hell. That would be hell, to be cooped up for hundreds of years or thousands of years, watching, growing new bodies that, because when you're growing a new body, like two humans have an offspring, they have a child, they shape that child. by what they teach that child. If that child doesn't have exposure to anything else but what those parents provide, whatever those parents are, whether they're in an institution or whether they're in a family environment. But in the case of the Luciferians, I think it's probably very little family environment. It's very much more like an institutional environment, to where it's they're strictly growing vehicles that they can then inhabit. So that's how the fallen angels are the same as the current space aliens, because the fallen angel souls have inhabited and taken over the offspring they generated. That had offspring, that had offspring, that had offspring, and they were continuously there, because the spirits didn't die. The souls that we're calling the fallen angels, the souls didn't actually die, because the next level was going to wait to recycle them until the end of the garden, to where the experiment is over. So that brings us to the current time, where you have space alien groups that are now there's a part to this puzzle there's a lot of parts to the puzzle that I don't understand yet. I think I will understand them in time, if I need to understand them. But because I believe that the next level, at some point between the flood and when Jesus came incarnate, let them out of the flood wouldn't be the only way that the next level would have to keep them in their underground facility. For one, until the humans had developed their ability to develop technology themselves, Luciferian space aliens and their Nephilim breed of human equivalents wouldn't really have much they would want to do with the existing humans on the surface of the planet, because those existing humans would seem primitive to them. Because don't forget, they're being raised by individuals that had some relationship with the next level. So these are individuals that know for a fact that there are people on different planets, and know for a fact that there's a possibility of all the technology of spacecrafts and laser beams, like I said in Atlantis. They had some kind of laser device, according to Plato. I never saw exactly where Plato said that, so I may be wrong about that. But I'm going by the movie, which might have been a Hollywoodized version of what Plato talked about Atlantis. But in any case, so they wouldn't really have that much in common to want to mingle with humans, except for the way in which humans could provide them with service. Whether that service is to mine gold, hint the Egyptians that had the Hebrews mining gold. So I would think that the space aliens were giving those ideas of the use of the gold to the Pharaoh. Whether the Pharaoh knew that they were space aliens or not, I don't know. It seems like from hieroglyphics that David Icke talked about, which I'm not a supporter of David Icke, just because I'm using an example that he used, because I use examples of everything, because everything, there's all kinds of pieces to the puzzle that can be brought in. But according to him, and I think other people as well, I think I saw another documentary on it as well, that showed hieroglyphics of spacecrafts, and we have that 1500s fresco painting of an individual flying inside what looks like a comet, flying through the heavens and through the clouds and stuff, sitting inside. And it's definitely a person sitting inside that little module. And so the Nephilim aren't going to really, and there's talk about how they were surviving underground, and they looked reptilian, and according to that high priest in Africa, some South Africa somewhere, I think, or maybe Zimbabwe, where he was abducted, hit with a green or blue light, and abducted and was taken into what he thought was like an underground facility or like a cave kind of structure. And he was told that they use gold to smear on their bodies in order to cleanse the toxins out of their bodies so they can live longer and healthier, and that they live on blood. They didn't say what kind of blood, but I imagine the space aliens would be, busy on the surface of the planet as soon as they could, trying to find sources for the nutrition, and that blood might be the primary source of nutrition to them, and that's why maybe all the blood is drained out of all these cattle mutilations that have been still going on, mostly in the West United States, but I wouldn't doubt it could be going on everywhere. Because for them to have their own herds of animals in an underground facility is going to be hard to maintain for a long period of time. So they were probably chomping at the bit to get out, and they're probably living on fish, because during the flood, all the fish certainly wouldn't have been killed. Tiendo didn't ever give any indication that a dolphin would have a soul. So I don't think it was dolphins that would be killed by this Revelations 16:3, talking about when the second angel pours out its vial upon the sea. Now, so as a result of the Nephilim finally coming out to the surface and continuing to propagate in their underground facility, and then potentially propagate with the humans that came from the Noah clan, this is probably generations after the water subsided, many generations after perhaps. The space aliens at some point, I believe, would have been locked up again. Now, I don't know how the next level does that, if they just know when they come and go, and when they saw that, or if they forced them somehow to actually force them with a beam or something, with one of their spacecrafts, they could shine it on the Luciferian spacecraft and actually force them into their underground facility and then put a seal on it. They could do that if they wanted to, if they didn't want them influencing humans too much. Because the next level is very careful about how much exposure the humans have to spacecrafts. They don't really want the humans to see spacecrafts. Especially in the early days where they don't want to confuse the humans by thinking that everything that flies is the same. Even Tian-Do, when they came incarnate, at first thought that all UFOs were next level spacecrafts from the evolutionary level above human. But then when they saw the reports from the abductees and the contactees and channelers or whatever, but mostly the abductees and the contactees, the reports of what took place on the spacecrafts, like with Betty and Barney Hill and Travis Walton and Adamski and David Fry and all different reports that they got. There were hundreds of them, those kind of reports. I don't know how many were available to Tian-Do at the time, but it didn't take a lot for them to see behavior on the spacecraft that they knew was not next level behavior. And that made them think that there was more going on, so that they told us at that point that if you were in a circumstance in the future and a spacecraft landed, make sure it's us before you get on. And they didn't expound on how we would determine that it was them. But I believe actually what would happen would be that if I was to look at, if Do came with his current vehicle, which is not the Marshall Applewhite vehicle, and he landed or walked into my house to talk to me with his vehicle and allowed me to see his vehicle, because they can cloak themselves so that we don't see them. If I was able to stand seeing him, because remember, Jehovah said to Moses that if Moses actually saw him, he would die. Moses' vehicle would die. And so that Jehovah only showed Moses his side or shoulder, I think it was. And so Moses could actually see him. And there were a lot of indications that Jehovah was actually physical, because they wanted to impress the humans with their physicality all along. That's why Jesus left with his physical body and stayed around for 40 days, proving to his disciples he was physical, because they use physical bodies in the next level. So they don't want people thinking that they're spirits floating around on clouds. That's what the Luciferians try to teach, because they're spirits floating around on clouds. Even though they're manipulating humans that have physical bodies and human equivalents that have physical bodies, the Nephilim. And the humans that aren't on spacecrafts, that are in the human world, that they're also manipulating, whether they know it or not. And I was going to get to that eventually too. But so as a result, of course, those that were anti the next level, which is the way that all the Nephilim would be trained to think, probably be trained to think that the next level are strictly another group of space aliens from someplace else, from Orion, for instance, maybe they were told. Who knows what they were told. Each group could be told something different, because originally, the next level allowed space aliens from different planetary systems to come to the Earth because they wanted to give all those that would come here the opportunity to become members of the next level, which would require them to sacrifice the existing physical body they had. And through what would be seen by the humans as space alien crashes, because the next level would use the spacecraft that they brought with them from whatever planetary system they came from to crash. Because the next level, they're not going to crash one of their spacecrafts, because their spacecrafts are so beyond the space alien spacecrafts in technology and in all ways. And actually, the next level spacecrafts are actually living, just like members of the next level grow a physical body that's living, and then they inhabit that physical body like it's a suit of clothing, like it's like a diving bell or like a space suit. They wear different suits of clothes for different purposes, but they, for the most part, always wearing some kind of physical body. I'm not saying all of them are. I don't know. But it's a physical kingdom. So they use physical bodies and they interface with one another in a physical framework, and they work with the physical creation. And when they don't want the humans or human equivalents to see them, then they cloak themselves and they cloak their spacecrafts. That might be as simple as just being inside a cloud or even generating the cloud itself, Theodore said. They can generate cloud. And I think there's been some sightings of that, to where they saw a cloud just growing from nothing. So what we're seeing there is a spacecraft that's cloaked to some degree, or a spacecraft that is further away. I mean, who knows how many options there are. And it's shooting some kind of ray or some kind of in a certain area to try to create the cloud cover, so that then they can move into that cloud cover and not be seen by the humans. But all that's done with their technology, and they've got technology that makes everything the humans have primitive at best. And their technology doesn't have negative ramifications unless, for instance, they force the issue. If a human forces the issue and insists on doing something that the next level told them not to do, then they're going to suffer the consequences. And that happened in the Moses camp, to where Moses said that Jehovah said that anybody that goes over to close to the tent where Jehovah was coming and going from through his cloud cover, his pillar of cloud, he said they will die. And a bunch of them decided to test it, and they died when they went there. And that happened in a number of ways in the camp, to where a whole bunch of them were dying all the time because of all the rebels that were in that group. Just because they were called the children of Israel didn't mean that they were all, destined to become members of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. They all had to go through tests, and then the cream comes to the top of the milk through the churning. It takes a certain amount of aggressive, even violent activity to get the vehicle under control. And that's why Jesus said that it's even acceptable for someone to make themselves, to neuter themselves, to make themselves into a eunuch. And he wasn't just talking physics. You notice that when Jesus meant something literally, he said it in a number of ways. Or the prophecies, when they meant something literally, they said it in a number of ways. And for instance, when he talked about making self a eunuch, he also talked about how if your eye offends you, then pluck it out. It would be better to go through life with one less eye than to lose your potential bond to the next level, and because of that, have your soul dissolved in the lake of fire. Second death. First death is the physical death of the vehicle that we are deposited with. And then we die. That's the first death. And the second death is when that deposit is actually destroyed as well. And destroyed might be put into another form of energy, of course. You know, if it's in the lake of fire, whatever that means, it sounds like the sun, or it sounds like a lava flow or some sort to me. But so so it, so it appears that the bottomless pit, which is another way of saying the center of the earth, or inside the earth, or hell, or beneath the earth, because all those ways of saying it are in various places of the Old and New Testament. In order for the humans to be tested, at some point they were let out of that facility again, and they certainly were out of it at the time that Paul of Tarsus was prosecuting and persecuting and presiding over the roundup of believers in Jesus, and also presided over the killing of of Stephen. As far as we know, was considered to be the first martyr, or the first one that was documented for Jesus. Gave his life for Jesus, laid it down. A suicide mission, knowing that if he talked about Jesus, they would throw stones at him. They tried to do it to Jesus, I don't know how many times, maybe 10 times on the depiction in the verses, and I would believe that it was probably more than that. They tried to throw him off a cliff at one point, but it wasn't his time, so the next level made sure that he got away from that. Those thought that was a mistake that he made, that required the next level to save him from that. Because that would have been too soon to exit. He wouldn't have taught the disciples what they needed to know in order to become delegates, which is the meaning of the word apostle. Delegates. So Paul never was a delegate because the president only could assign delegates. And Jesus was the president in the terms of the next level organization that he had on the planet at that time. Which actually his older member was more the president, I guess, and he was more, or older member was the admiral, and he was a captain. Let's put it that way. So I believe is also the same one as depicted as the Archangel Michael. And Archangel also means captain. Captain of a member of the next level or the kingdom of God. So we have but then they were locked up again at some point after they saw to it that all the disciples were bumped off. But when they had already spread enough of the information, the next level saw to it that they weren't bumped off before that. So whenever they got into trouble, the next level bailed them out, whether it was in jail or wherever they were, the next level got them out of it so that they could continue to talk to people. And and so and so then they would have been locked up again. And that's where it said 1,000 years they were locked up. So I don't know when that would have been opened again, but it could have been opened and closed a number of times, for all I know. Maybe that, but I know also that the next level, like for instance, whenever you see a flap of UFO sighting, then you can be sure of one or two things, that it's either the next level or it's the space aliens. Now, the next level they tend to selectively appear, and in the mid 1800s there was a big what they call a flap of sightings of cigar-shaped objects. And then in the late 1800s, the 1890s, there was another big flap, and that's when the Aurora crash happened of a spacecraft in Aurora, Texas. Unless that was a hoax that was perpetrated by the Luciferians to try to second guess when the next level was going to come. Because for all I know, that could have been perpetrated because remember the Luciferians are still discarnate. So they're, excuse me, so they're able to leave that facility underground or under the ocean or wherever they are, in a pyramid, for instance, that could have been made to hide the entrance to their underground base. So when the next level let them out again, which is depicted in Revelations 9:1, I believe, with the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key in the bottomless pit. Now, that star falling from heaven, fall can mean fall as in I fell down and hurt myself, I fell from grace, but it also is linked to the word piptu, the Greek word piptu, which means to descend from a higher place to a lower, through the idea of alighting. So that's, alighting is like like they described the body, the spirit body that came down like a dove that rested upon the vehicle, the physical body named Jesus. It was described because it was visual. It was seen by some people. John the Baptist saw it, and some others saw it. They could actually see this image of a body. So it would have been the shape of a humanoid body that was coming down, descending, like a dove, they described it. So it was descending like the way like a bird would descend. Probably if a bird was like a hummingbird or a bird that was able to hover a little bit and just slowly kind of come down, which I've seen seagulls do that. So that's the way this word fall can be used. And when it says from heaven, that's coming from the next level. That's coming from outer space. That's coming from the upper atmosphere. And so, and then it says to earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. That's saying that it was the next level crew. Because an angel represents a crew, and it's not necessarily a singular form. The next level really doesn't do things in single ways. Even coming incarnate, Jesus was incarnate, but his older member was right there with him on a regular basis, as you could see by the Transfiguration account, where there were two individuals that showed up to deliver the information to him that it was time to commit suicide. He had to lay down his life. That was a suicide mission. He knew it was a suicide mission. He talked about that he was going to die. That's suicide. When you step into a circumstance on purpose to where you know you're going to die. Anybody would call that suicide now. So Jesus was suicidal. I know that's hard to take. But the sooner you get over it, the sooner you'll actually see the truth of who Jesus was. I know this stuff, this has been taking a long time for me to come up to speed with this and to talk about it even. It's very hard to think about this and allow this to be reality in our brains. It takes a lot of time. So anybody that's actually sharing T&O information with people, be very slow to talk like I'm talking. You know, I mean, if you run into a Christian and they're calling you a heretic and blah, 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 to where you can already see that they're significantly affected by all this. And you just want to make sure that they get the full dose, because it's going to take a full dose to shake them out of that stupor, to wake them up a little bit so that they can see that what you're talking about is exactly what they say they believe in. But so there's some shock therapy. The next level does use shock therapy, but not like the humans do, where they attach electrodes to your brain and stuff like that. That's strictly a human activity or a space alien activity. But the way that the next level uses shock therapy is with some form of trauma. And new information that's hard to receive is traumatic to receive and hold on to. And if you have too much of that information too fast, it can send you into an undesirable mental state. T&O said that animals around next level members are unpredictable, but the way they might act. And but I guess it depends on the animal. But so So the hymn was given. So the star gets this crew lands on Earth or within the vicinity of Earth. It doesn't say it's actually uh, coming to the Earth, but that doesn't mean that it's on the actual surface of the planet. Coming to the Earth is being within the atmosphere, because the next level has a big spacecraft in this atmosphere at this time already. That's what the New Jerusalem is. That's what the Holy City is. That's where the next level has their operation. And they fly spacecrafts in and out of that. And that big spacecraft is cloaked. I've talked about this before. I'm not going to go into it all over again. In my last broadcast, last Sunday, you can see I talk more about that big spacecraft and the size of it. It says, and they're given the key to the bottomless pit. So, so they have the facility, that crew, to open up that underground hiding place that became not just a hiding place, but became a prison cell. Because the whole earth is a prison to the Luciferian fallen angels. And all the fallen angels, all the space aliens are Luciferian fallen angels, space aliens. They're all in the same category at this time. Didn't mean that originally when they came to the planet they were. It depended upon whether they chose to go with the next level program of becoming a next level member, or chose to go against the next level. I don't know if there were some that were in between that are still being used by the next level for service as watchers or whatever, that just simply weren't ready to graduate yet. But then it says, and he opened the bottomless pit in Revelation 9:2, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Well, I think this is actually an indication that it was a mountaintop, a volcanic mountain that was actually stimulated to erupt, that actually allowed for the space aliens to come out of after the eruption. Now, I don't know that every eruption is that or not. We don't know how many bases there can be in the planet. But that would certainly be a way to close it up. Let's say the space aliens were inside of the Earth, and they had their entrance through a mountain. Whether they bored into that mountain to create that underground facility sometime in the past, because humans are boring right now. They have huge boring machines that bore tunnels wherever they want them to go. And using those also, well, I don't know if they're using the same kind of machines for the fracking, but it's interesting that there are some rumblings and stuff that people hear where they don't know where it's coming from, and it's because it's coming from underneath the ground, through the underground tunnels that are being made, that the sound vibrates, but nobody can see any evidence of it. And that can also stimulate little tiny earthquakes. But earthquakes could be a way that the next level crew opens and closes the fissures, I'm not sure how you say that, of these volcanoes. But that's what the smoke is out of this pit, smoke of a volcano. So look around the 1940s and 50s. I'm going to do this after this broadcast. to see where the volcanic activity was. And you might get and if there's one in the United States area, you can have a pretty good guess that that was where there was an underground base. There might have been one in the Shasta area, because T and Doe felt like there was an underground base in the Shasta area. And T and Doe weren't the first ones to talk about that. Blavatsky, and there was a lot of talk about some kind of underground, or that there was a base for the higher echelon of the Ascended Masters. And the Ascended Masters are all the Nephilim. They're the humans that were taught the tricks of the spirit world, and the use of herbs, and the use of meditation, and the use of focus of the mind, and for whatever purposes. And inventions, creating energy systems, and all kinds of things, acupuncture, acupressure, all those kind of things. Now, the next level, they are the ones that provided that information to begin with, but they don't have to re-provide it all the time. When they have the space aliens that they can let out of the bottomless pit, they will do that. So they choose to let the space aliens out of the bottomless pit when they want to stimulate that growth in the humans, because that gives the humans the choice to look to those things or look to the next level. And that's why in the Moses camp, it was made very taboo to get into those things, because you can be lured into thinking then that you are yourself a god, because these individuals that once had godly apprentice positions are to humans as gods. In the mythological form, they are a lot of the ones that were doing that mythology that got recorded as, and probably exaggerated, and who knows, twisted and turned like Hollywood to make it into something that is not realistic depiction anymore. But where it originated from was probably from the space aliens from a previous civilization, which when we talk about the flood, we're talking about wiping out of the civilization to where there was a civilization before that, before the flood. It started with whenever the next level started it, with all the animals and everything that they stimulated the growth of on the planet, which doesn't mean that they didn't use all their programs for, because they have all that genetic material and information stored in their computer banks. However, I mean, the next level could consider a computer bank to be another planet where all those animals are growing. That's like their source of all that those animals. So they don't have to go back to the laboratory necessarily, and then add a little of this and a little of this to the test tube to stimulate the growth of that. When they have a planet that's full of it, all they got to do is have a spacecraft that can pick up those animals and give them an environment on that spacecraft to survive, and then take those animals to a new planet and put them exactly where they want them to be. And then they made those animals, because they made that genetic code to begin with. Now the space aliens can do that too. But the difference is the space aliens don't have access to other planets where that's happening, unless they brought animals with them when they came through that wormhole. And those animals were able to survive, or they bred those animals on board that spacecraft. Which I doubt there'd be too much of that, because of, I don't know, it just seems like it might be hard to do, because it seems to be impossible to breed in space. I'm sure they're trying to do it. I'm sure they're, well, I'm not positive, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the females that went up into space were enlisted um, to be part of an experiment to see if they could be impregnated in space. I don't know if they're doing that, but certainly the space aliens would be trying to do that. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if the humans were doing it. Now, I want to make a statement before this closes this broadcast because BP Earthwatch, who does a lot of Bible prophecy interpretation, and I think does a poor job of it, in my opinion. He's not very thorough, and he basically just reads the scriptures and then says a little bit about it, and then what he says about it doesn't necessarily even relate to what he's saying. So I think he should stick to, I mean, not should, but it's misleading people. And he's got lots of followers. I mean, he puts a broadcast up there because of all that work he did with the outer space information. That was great, and I loved it. He should stick to that. Or he should do a better job of trying to interpret so that he's not just, just pulling things out of his hat or from the commentary that he reads in the Bible software. That's easy to do. You got to actually decipher every word. And you also have to have an open mind. And it's very hard for any Christians, especially the ones that are doing the broadcasting, to open their minds so much as to consider that T and Do were the second coming and were the first phase of that second coming. There might be actually, the fourth, well, I'm not going to get into that now because I don't have time. But because he says that we're at the first angel with trumpet period of time right now, because he thinks that Jesus didn't come yet. So we can't be in. So the two witnesses are in the sixth angel with trumpets, and we haven't seen all the things that were depicted in the previous five angels, except that that's because we don't know the interpretation of those things, and we don't also know that the angels with trumpets, the sounding angels that were producing the sound is a communication. That's what these angels are doing. They're providing communication, information. That's their primary purpose. So the events that are stimulated by that information are real, but we don't know. Well, that's why I'm saying that hail in the first angel with trumpets is actually related to the next level saying, hello, we're here, because hail is actually from the same root, and we're here, and we're going to be bringing you our mind in a way that you can handle it. And this, I believe, happened in the early 1900s, maybe the 1910, the 1920 period of time, maybe the late 1800s to from 1900 to 1920, something like that. I don't know exactly what span of time exactly, but might have been 24-year periods. I have to do some more work on that, but you can see the evidence of it by what took place in the human kingdom and where it took place. That's where they opened. That's where they were bringing their mind. That's where they were doing the sounding. And And so when it said that would be the sounding of the first angel would be followed with hail, yet there was no additional indication that it was hailstones, as in ice balls, or rocks, because stones didn't necessarily have to mean, well, the actual word, hail, here's what I wrote about it, which I'll be posting this on my blog eventually. That hail comes from chalaza, which in Strong's Concordance is 5464, the Greek word, and he says it as probably from chaleo, 5465, and then he says it just means hail. Okay, so he didn't say anything new. So you have to go to 5465 to see what it means. And what you see is it says chaleo, actually pronounced Khalaaho, kalao, is from the base of chasma, or chasma, I think is the way you pronounce it, or chasma, which is 5490, which means to lower as into a void, to let down or strike. If you look at actual chasma, it's like chasm. It has to do with a gulf, an otherwise impassable interval. So what I'm saying is that this was the next level coming for the first time, because it also means hail, which is a greeting. And hail comes from the word karayo, which also goes back to chasma. Oh no, it goes back to the original hail word, 5465 or 5465, yeah, 4 or 5. I don't remember off the top of my head that one, but which means to be cheerful, but it also means on meeting, a salutation on meeting. So what I have found through my countless hours of deciphering prophecy is that many of the meanings, or all of the meanings that we see listed here, can apply. So basically this I don't believe has anything to do with hail, except that was the announcement time. That was the delivery of information. And now we're past that. So now we're in the period of time to where the events that were depicted then are coming into play. And some of that might be actual hail, which can be rocks falling from the sky. But that I don't think it's going to be asteroids, because and meteors, because that's said in a different way in other prophecies, as being the stars falling from the sky. And there's two other prophecies in Revelations that talks about the hail as stones. It actually says that they have the weight of a talent, which is a coin. So they've kind of got some pretty significant weight to them. And they're considered to be also to be great, which also means big. So the next level gives you more descriptors when they want you to actually have a more a better understanding of what they're actually talking about. Just like they said that Jesus' return would be in a new vehicle with a white head, white as snow and white as lamb's wool, with white hair, which is lamb's wool, and white and snow as like snow. So they were showing you that it was coloration that they were talking about. And that's the end of the broadcast. So I hope this was of some value to you.